All right, let's jump right in. We're going around the world today, folks.
Around the
Yeah,
world.
you ready for a little world tour?
Always.
We've got Australia, Brazil, India,
Wow.
Pakistan, Ukraine, and Vietnam.
That's a lot of ground to cover.
It is. There are a lot of interesting
Okay.
reports out there. And,
Absolutely.
we like to bring those to the listeners so they can kind of be in the know with what's happening.
Yeah, keep that finger on the pulse.
That's right, the pulse of aviation.
Yeah.
So let's start off with Regional Express in Australia.
Rex.
Rex, right. They've had a tough time lately, but the Australian government just kind of gave them this lifeline.
Oh.
50 million Australian dollars.
Wow, that's a pretty significant lifeline. What was the thinking behind that?
Well, it looks like they really want to prevent Rex from going completely bankrupt,
Right.
which, I mean, airlines do. That happens.
Yeah.
But this is a little different because it seems like a lot of the regional communities
Mhm.
really rely on Rex. And so for the government to just let those flights disappear would be a political nightmare.
I see, yeah. There's definitely a social and political dimension to this. It's not just about the economics of the airline industry.
Right. And I think we're going to see more and more of that, this kind of
Yeah.
government intervention.
Makes sense, especially for those vital regional connections. Those communities rely on those services.
Absolutely. Rex also had a little bit more going on. They decided to sell their pilot training facility
Hmm.
and Boeing 737 simulator
Hmm.
to a company called Navinci GM. Now, this is pretty interesting
Yeah.
because it's led to the emergence of this brand new pilot training organization in Australia called Salus Sim.
Okay, interesting. Is there any insight into why Rex would sell those off, especially while they're facing financial difficulties?
Well, it seems like they're trying to go back to their roots,
Okay.
right? They had kind of a difficult time when they were trying to operate those larger Boeing 737-800s. So now they're going back to the regional prop flights,
Hmm.
which makes sense as to why they would maybe,
Right, streamlining.
yeah, streamline exactly and offload some of these facilities.
Yeah, focus on their core business makes sense. It'll be interesting to see what Salas Sim does in that market now. With the pilot shortage, it could be a pretty strategic move.
Absolutely. Now let's
Yeah.
jump over to Brazil,
Okay.
where GOL, Linhas Aéreas Inteligências, is potentially,
Okay.
coming out of Chapter 11 bankruptcy. And when that happens, you get
Yeah.
some big names circling around.
Who are we talking about here?
So we've got Air France, KLM, we've got American Airlines, we've got IAG, International Airlines Group,
Wow, a lot of interest.
Lufthansa Group, and United Airlines. They all want a little piece of GOL.
Why is that? What's the big attraction with GOL?
Well, they've got a very strong domestic network in Brazil, and these global airlines, they see that,
Right.
and they think, oh, that would give us much better connectivity in South America.
It's all about expanding that reach, making those connections. But I think there's another piece to this puzzle, isn't there?
Yes, there is, and it's a big one.
The potential merger.
The merger, that's right.
Azul and GOL, that would be huge.
It would be huge. Azul and Haas Areas Brasileiras and GOL's parent company, Abra Group. If they merge,
Right.
that's basically a monopoly in the Brazilian market.
Right. No wonder all these other airlines are trying to get a foothold in before that happens.
Yeah, they don't want to be left out in the cold.
Okay.
So we'll see what happens. It looks like GOL is looking at maybe exiting Chapter 11 by the second quarter of 2025.
Okay.
They got a 5-year plan,
5-year plan. All right.
which includes some fleet expansion, and their projected EBITDA,
Yeah.
get this, is 1.7 billion US dollars.
Wow, that's a big number. A lot going on in Brazil, a lot of moving pieces.
Definitely. Lots of moving pieces. Now let's go to India. Sadly, Go First is going through liquidation.
It's always unfortunate.
Yeah. But there's an interesting twist.
Oh,
A former bidder is trying to challenge this liquidation.
okay, who are we talking about?
Busy Bee Airways. And they're backed by this Ease My Trip co-founder, Nishant Petty.
Okay.
And they are saying, hold on, we've got a new plan. Maybe we can revive Go First.
That's bold, especially with everything that's already happened.
It is. And it's going to be a complicated case because
Yeah.
Go First's aircraft, they've been deregistered.
Oh, wow.
And there's a lot of claims against them.
Yeah.
But Busy Bee Airways, they're saying that reviving Go First would be a good thing for competition in India.
Right, right.
And it would be good for consumers as well.
Yeah, makes sense. It'll be interesting to see if the courts agree.
Yeah, it's all up in the air right now. It's all with the National Company Law Appellate Tribunal, or NCLA.
And CLFC.
Yeah, big word.
Yeah.
Right? But they've adjourned the case. So Busy Bee Airways has a chance to file an additional affidavit.
Okay.
So we'll see what happens. But it definitely is not the end of that saga.
No, definitely not. Always more to the story.
All right. From a legal battle Let's move over to Pakistan,
Right.
where we've got Pakistan International Airlines, or PIA. They're dealing with the aftermath of some flight bans.
Yeah, that's been rough for them. Those bans by the US, the UK, and the EU really hit them hard.
Yeah, it all stemmed from those safety concerns. There was that fake pilot license scandal, and then, of course, the tragic A320 crash.
It's a reminder of how crucial safety and reputation are for airlines. It can really make or break them.
Yeah, and they've lost a ton of revenue.
Yeah, particularly that hard currency from international flights.
Absolutely, but there is a bit of a silver lining here.
Okay, what's that?
The EU has lifted their ban,
Oh, good.
and PIA, they jumped right on that and resumed flights to Paris.
That's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, and there might be even more good news coming soon, because the UK Civil Aviation Authority, they're over there right now
Oh, really?
in Pakistan conducting this big safety audit.
Big audit. All right.
So if they give PIA the thumbs up, we could see flights to London, Manchester, and Birmingham taking off again.
Wow, that would be huge for them.
It would be huge, not just financially, but symbolically.
Right,
It
yeah.
would show that they've kind of earned back this trust and that they're back on track.
Could even pave the way for privatization, which I know the Pakistani government has been looking at.
Absolutely. So it's definitely a big moment for them. Now, speaking of challenges, let's hop over to Ukraine.
Okay.
Skyline Express, they're showing some real resilience.
Yeah, amidst all that's going on.
Absolutely. They've reactivated their Boeing 777-300ER.
Wow.
I mean, you talk about determination, even with everything that's happening there.
Yeah, the human desire to connect, even in the face of adversity.
Absolutely. And finally, let's land in Vietnam.
All right, Vietnam.
Vietjet Air. They're about to potentially make history.
What are they up to?
They are preparing to wet lease the Chinese-made C909 aircraft.
The C909, interesting. Okay, and this wet lease, tell me a little bit more about that.
So a wet lease is basically where an airline leases an aircraft from another airline, but it includes the crew, maintenance, insurance, everything.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of like,
Bunky.
yeah, turnkey operation. Is often used for short-term capacity needs or to even try out a new type of aircraft
Makes sense.
without committing to buying it.
Right.
So they're getting a little test drive of this C909.
Yeah, get a feel for it.
Now, the C909, this is a big deal because this is a potential rival
Oh, yeah.
to Boeing and Airbus.
Big players.
Exactly. And so for them to wet lease it and really put it through its paces,
Right, see how it performs.
it's going to be interesting to see. And, you know, it includes test flights as well. So it's really going to be under,
Yeah, real world conditions.
yeah, real-world conditions.
This is a big moment for Comac, the manufacturer,
Absolutely.
to really see how their aircraft stacks up.
Yeah. And so a lot of people are excited to see what this means.
Absolutely.
Will this be a disruption to the global market?
Yeah, will it change the landscape?
Exactly.
Big questions.
Now, we're going to come back after a quick break and really dive deep into the C909 and all the implications of that.
Looking forward to it.
So stay tuned.
Yeah, I mean, it could shake things up quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if airlines have more choices than just
Right.
Boeing and Airbus.
More competition, potentially lower prices.
Innovation, yeah, it could be a win for passengers. Who knows?
It really could. You know, stepping back a bit, looking at all these reports, it feels like we're seeing a real shift in the relationship between governments and airlines.
Oh, yeah, yeah. You saw it with Rex in Australia. You're seeing it with that potential merger in Brazil.
Governments are really trying to figure out their role,
Yeah.
how to balance those economic realities with the need to keep people connected, especially in those more remote regions.
And it's a tough question. Will we see more nationalized airlines? More privatization? It's hard to say.
It really is. Each region is different, but one thing's for sure. Governments are going to be a major player in aviation for the foreseeable future.
And speaking of major players, can't forget about safety. That PIA situation, it just shows how quickly things can go south when there are those kinds of lapses.
Oh, absolutely. Trust is everything in this industry. Passengers need to feel confident that the airline they're flying with is prioritizing their safety.
Yeah, one incident, like that fake pilot license scandal, and it can take years to rebuild that trust.
Years, or it can even be the end for an airline. But then you see cases like Skyline Express in Ukraine, reactivating that Boeing 777 in the middle of a conflict.
Yeah,
It's a reminder of that resilience.
yeah, it's more than just a business, isn't it?
It really is. It's about connecting people, even when things are tough.
Speaking of connecting people, let's bring it back to that C909 for a minute.
Okay, yeah, that potential game changer.
What do you think is the most interesting thing about this whole development?
For me, it's the potential to disrupt that Boeing-Airbus duopoly. Could this be the start of a real shift in the balance of power in the industry?
Yeah, and I'm also curious to see how Boeing and Airbus respond.
Right. Will they double down on innovation, try to lock up more market share through mergers and acquisitions?
Yeah,
Yeah.
could get really interesting. But back to the C909 itself, you mentioned those test flights Vietjet Air is doing as part of that wet lease agreement.
Right.
Can you break down exactly what a wet lease is and why it matters in this case?
Sure. A wet lease is basically when one airline leases an aircraft from another airline, but it includes everything: crew, maintenance, insurance.
Right.
It's a way for an airline to add capacity quickly, maybe test out a new aircraft type without that long-term commitment of buying it outright.
So VJet's basically getting a test drive.
Exactly, a test drive. They can see how the C909 performs in real-world conditions.
And Comac, the
Right.
manufacturer, they get valuable data
Hmm.
to help them get that international
Make
certification.
sure everybody wins. Well, assuming the C909 lives up to the hype.
So are there any downsides to the C909? How does it actually stack up against those Boeing and Airbus jets?
Well, from what we've seen in the reports, it's a narrow-body twin-engine jet, up to 190 passengers, designed for those medium-haul routes. Direct competitor to the Boeing 737 MAX and the Airbus A320neo family.
All right, so similar size, similar range.
Seems like it, yeah. Fuel efficiency looks comparable too.
Okay.
But the big questions are reliability and operating costs over the long term.
Yeah, that's what's going to make or break it for the airlines.
Exactly. Airlines are businesses. They need to know that an aircraft is going to be a smart investment.
That's where those test flights are crucial.
Absolutely. Real-world data is what's going to show how efficient this plane really is.
So it sounds like it's not just about the technology, it's also about the economics.
It always is. Innovation is great, but at the end of the day, these planes have to make financial sense for the airlines.
It's fascinating how all these different factors come together.
Yeah, technology, economics, geopolitics, even environmental concerns. It's a complex web.
It is. It's what makes this industry so interesting to follow.
It keeps you on your toes, that's for sure.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. Australia, Brazil, India, Pakistan, Ukraine, Vietnam.
Whirlwind tour.
And a lot of these stories, they highlight those bigger trends that are shaping the entire industry.
Absolutely. The financial challenges, the role of governments, the emergence of new players like Comac.
And how all of that impacts passengers ultimately.
Right, because that's what it's all about in the end.
So as we wrap this up, what are some of the key questions our listeners should be thinking about when it comes to the future of air travel?
Well, I think one of the biggest ones is how all of this, the financials, the governments, the new players, even the geopolitical stuff, how is it all going to affect the passenger experience?
Yeah, will flying become more affordable, more exclusive?
Will we see radically different aircraft designs, or will things become more standardized?
What about the role of technology?
So many questions, and the answers are still unfolding.
It's an exciting time to be following aviation, that's for sure.
It really is. There's never a dull moment.
Yeah, it feels like we're at this point where, I don't know, everything's changing.
Definitely a turning point. You've got these big established airlines trying to figure out how to stay on top. Then you have, like we said, these new players
Yeah.
coming in, trying to disrupt the market, and then all the economic and political uncertainty in the world.
Yeah, it's like a whole other layer on top of it all.
Makes it hard to predict what's going to happen, but that's what makes it exciting.
It does, it does. But one thing that really struck me going through all these reports is how resilient the aviation industry is.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, think about what they've been through in recent years.
Pandemic, fuel prices through the roof, and now all these financial struggles.
Yeah.
But they always seem to find a way to adapt.
It's pretty impressive.
And not just survive, but innovate.
Yeah. You see it with sustainable fuels. You see it with new aircraft like the C909.
And it's not just the companies either, it's the people.
Oh, absolutely.
The pilots, the crew, the ground staff, the air traffic controllers.
Yeah, they're the ones who keep everything running.
They don't always get the recognition they deserve.
True, true. So as we wrap up here, what would you say is the biggest takeaway from all of this?
I think the biggest takeaway is that the future of aviation is wide open.
Yeah, it really is.
There will be challenges, of course, but there's also incredible potential.
For growth, for innovation, maybe even for a more sustainable industry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's something worth getting excited about.
It is. So to all our listeners out there, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of aviation.
We appreciate being here.
Keep your eyes on the skies, and until next time, happy travels.